Well, welcome everyone. It is Saturday, April 1st, April Fool's. Given it's past noontime, at least in this part of the world, April Fool's jokes are not relevant and will not be considered. So we won't play any tricks on you. I'd like, on behalf of Halifax Center, I would like to welcome you. John Nangreaves is our president, and he is somewhere out there in Zoom land. So welcome again, John, and he can be reached at president@halifax.rasc.ca. So if you have any questions or concerns about the center, or you'd like, for instance, to suggest something for us to address either here at our members meeting or something that perhaps the board should be considering, please contact John. For the other folk, for instance, if you have outreach or observing questions or something about the library, you can certainly go to our website, halifax.rasc.ca, and go to contact us, and all our email information and who you should be talking to is there in the contact us. If for some reason you have to step out during part of this meeting, but you wanted to see the part that you missed, or you would like to view other presentations from previous meetings, please go to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube to RASC Halifax and we be there. First, I would like to make acknowledgement of the Indigenous lands on which we meet. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Maliseet peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Maliseet title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. I'd also like to welcome everyone. The RASC nationally, as well as the RASC Halifax Center, believe in and practice inclusivity and diversity. All are welcomed regardless of age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, ethnic origin, color, nationality, national origin, religion or belief, or sex or sexual orientation. We are opposed to all forms of unlawful and unfair discrimination. If for any reason any member receives any form of harassment in any shape or form, either during this meeting or subsequent to it, or even in between meetings, please let one of the board members know. We will not abide by it and we will deal with it. So today's program, we do recognize that this one is being held completely on Zoom this time because of complications we had with getting everyone together at St. Mary's. We're still going to have a 10-minute break here to allow people that time to do whatever they'd like to for 10 minutes, perhaps get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. But today's program, I'd like to welcome everyone, to our guests who are speakers, and to those people attending today's meetings who are not a member of RASC Halifax Center. Welcome. We strongly encourage you to become a member of RASC Halifax Center, and certainly to the members that are here, good to see you again. First up after the welcome will be a photo montage by David Hoskin. And as you can see on the left-hand side here, hot and cold, that is the focus of today's meeting. We've got two presenters, one who's, well, Tarek is originally from Lebanon, so hence the hot. So he'll be addressing some of the photos and how he took them in the hot environments, with the exclusion of Iceland. I believe you're including some stuff there. But Jeremy Kuzub, who is a new welcome member to Halifax Center. So welcome, Jeremy. He'll be addressing the cold because he's going to be talking about auroras and how to best capture those photos. As well, and I forgot one person, and I apologize, Paul. Paul Heath is our resident poet to address the his Food for the Soul. It will be after David Hoskin, Paul. My apologies, I missed it here. But that's where you'll be before Tarek speaks. And then following Jeremy will be What's Up in the April Skies by our Education Public Outreach and Observing Chair, David Hoskin, and then Pat Kelledy, our Vice President, will present some of the board notes. Now, as you can appreciate, this is April Fool's. Does anybody know what the origins of April Fools came from? Well, apparently it goes way back to 1582. And they were switching from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian. And the people that insisted on remaining with the Julian calendar were considered April Fools. So hence the name. In France, for instance, the name that they have for April Fools is Poisson d'Avril, which is the April fish. And that was because young fish were considered gullible and easily caught. And it's also sort of a symbol or symbolizes the gullible people in the world. In Scotland, they actually celebrate it over 2 days. The first one is Gowkie Day, and I may be mispronouncing it, but it's the Cuckoo Day, cuckoo, the Cuckoo Bird Day. In other words, they're making fun of people. And it's followed by Taily Day, in which they put on people's butts either a bird feather or a sign that says "kick me." So it's interesting how that has evolved over the since 1582. And have there been any astronomical pranks as a consequence of April Fools? Well, there's one that I'd like to bring to your attention, and I read this in an article by Glenn Roberts in the Atlantic Skies on March. It was in the Halifax, the Chronicle Herald on March 28th, and that was actually the photo that was in the paper with this article of this fellow floating. And apparently there was a book called The Jupiter Effect, stating that there was an upcoming planet alignment in 74, where all the planets were aligned on one side of the sun that would result in massive earthquakes and tidal waves. Some people believed it, but then in 1976, the BBC, along with Sir Patrick Moore, decided to play a practical joke on the world. And Sir Patrick Moore announced a rare conjunction of Jupiter and Pluto was to occur at precisely 9:47 a.m. UTC. And this combined Jovian Plutonian gravitational forces would temporarily weaken Earth's gravitational force, resulting in people floating and objects floating in the air. Hence this photo that you see here that was in the newspaper. And amazingly enough, there were a number of reports of objects floating, but the one that struck me as absolutely hilarious was there was a group of ladies having tea at the time who claimed they became elevated and floated around the room. Glenn made the comment that he wondered, he says, which begs the question, what was in their tea? So with that, just to give you a little bit of humor and an introduction to April Fools. So I will now hand the program over to our first presenter, David Hoskin, who will give us the photo montage for the past month.
So these are March images captured by RASC Halifax members the last month. The skies weren't particularly kind for imaging in March, as they were not kind in February, so we can hope for better in April. But we still got some nice images. So this is an image that Jerry Black took of the Silver Sliver Galaxy. And I think Jerry said its integration time was 16 hours. So a Herculean effort there. Lovely picture. And it's galaxy season, so Jerry also imaged the Leo triplet. And for variety, Messier 13, the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules, which is climbing to a nice imaging position in the spring coming towards summer.
He also captured a small galaxy at about 7 o'clock.
That's right there. Yeah, I forget the NGC number, but it's a cool one. And Michael Boschat taking pictures from his windows in his apartment building. He took this white light image of sunspots earlier in the month. The sun is quite spotty in this image, and until recently, it had a lot of sunspots on it. Most of them are rotating out of view right now, but more on that later. And Michael also testing his new camera. These close-up images of a couple large sunspots. You can quite clearly see the umbra and penumbra in these, and there's a light bridge forming across in this particular sunspot. And the lighter areas here are, right here, are called plage. Barry Burgess took a hike early one morning to, one evening rather, to capture zodiacal light. And apparently he had a toboggan with a Christmas tree on it to use as a foreground. And you can see Venus glowing quite brightly there, and that might be Jupiter just near the horizon, and the Pleiades. And since he was out there, he decided to take an image of some star trails. Again, with a Christmas tree as foreground. It's kind of very cool, I think. And so he was out there for a while, at least probably an hour, maybe a couple hours. Dave Chapman took this image with the BGO scope, robotic scope, showing the Minor Planets series and a nearby Messier object, Messier 91. And he also took, I don't know if he took this picture, but he posted it of equinox noon at the Deanery Project Sky Pillar, and see how the shadows line up perfectly here on the spring equinox. Jason Dane, lucky guy. He was in Scandinavia for the recent Northern Lights show, and amongst many images, he took this one of the Northern Lights. You know, you can see the light reflecting off the snow. It was probably bright enough to read by. Of course, we had snow and cloud in Nova Scotia for that. That G4 geomagnetic storm. Hopefully we'll get another one when the weather's a little more cooperative. And Jason also captures zodiacal light perhaps a little bit later in the evening, because I don't see Jupiter, but I see Venus and Pleiades.
And Orion.
And Orion. Yep. He got all the and Taurus, he got all the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Nice picture. And this, I thought this was really cool from Jason. It's the Baby Eagle Nebula, located, it's part of the Taurus molecular cloud. And this is I guess you call it a reflection nebula, but it's light reflecting off the dust from lights from all the nearby stars. I don't know if I see oh yeah, there's the eagle, there's the beak. Okay, and there's a galaxy there. Lisa Ann took this picture of the Venus Jupiter conjunction. So Venus and Jupiter have switched positions from where they were last month. And Lisa also captured this image of a nearly full moon earlier in the month. Jeffrey Franklin, a shot of the crescent moon and Jupiter. And Melody Hamilton took this picture of colors are beautiful here, of the crescent moon showing Earthshine and Jupiter. You know, in addition to the colors, the resolution is amazing. Everything's so sharp in it. This is the sun on the 5th of March in hydrogen alpha I captured, and I guess it's noteworthy because there's really long filament and it just below the center of the sun, and some nice prominences trailing off into space. And I think these are the same sunspots that Michael Bochet took a picture of. I captured these with one of my cameras and then colorized it in Photoshop. And the Sea of Serenity on the moon, captured earlier in the month.
Mm.
Just because the moon was high in the sky and I wanted to take a picture of it. This shot is of two Messier objects, Messier 46 and Messier 47, both open star clusters. And the cool thing about Messier 46 is there's a small planetary nebula. It's not part of the cluster. I think it's actually behind the cluster, but it shows up within the cluster when you view it and take pictures of it. Grav Singh, M13. Nice close-up view of the globular cluster. Good resolution of stars. And Messier 51. It's a really nice showing. I think he's got blended in hydrogen alpha into this, because you can see the pinkish regions of star forming areas.
Mm.
And Kathy Walker took this image of the seagull's head. So here's the seagull's head, part of a larger nebula called the Seagull Nebula. Kathy also looked at the Leo triplet. This nice shot. And also the Owl Nebula, Messier 97, also by Kathy. And in the spirit, I think, of this being April 1st, this rare Saturn transit was captured. Jerry brought this to my attention. I wonder how many people got fooled by this one.
Yeah, that was posted on the National Rascals for those of you that are wondering, and I'm not sure if the comments indicated that they were fooled or whether they were playing along with it.
Yeah, always hard to tell.
It is.
Anyway, that's it for the montage this month.
Great, thank you. All right, just let me so next up, and I realize he wasn't on the agenda originally, and again, my apologies, Paul, but we'll let you introduce the poem while I put it up, okay?
Okay.
And
This is, as you might imagine, it's very difficult to describe something that's so ethereal and mysterious. Most of us have had the opportunity to see some amazing displays. There was one a few years back that lasted over 4 hours, and we just happened to be at St. Croix when it occurred, and it was an astounding combination of ribbons and curtains and spikes and red and green ovals, and it was so when you do get the opportunity to see Aurora, it is amazing. My first Aurora was looking south to see Aurora, because I was above the Arctic Circle the first time I saw Aurora. So I've seen a lot at sea, which is great because you don't have anything blocking your view. But it was a bit of a challenge to write this. I hope it comes out okay. Dancing souls, mystic emerald green, flows and ripples on a starlit sky. Ethereal curtains of undulating waves swept away the starlight. Spellbound, eyes look upwards. To warriors the Valkyries charge, souls collecting. To icebound hunters, a game their ancestors play upon the skies. Spellbound, eyes look upwards. In whispers they shy away, fearful, lonely ancestors away will sweep. Bad omens filling darkened skies. The ethereal motions mystifies. Spellbound, eyes look upward. Life's need is electrified. Our sustaining light's outburst is revealed. In mystic green and ethereal whites, at times blood-washed blocks the stars at night. spellbound, eyes look upward. Brief, yet so alluring, the pulsing, rippling, mystic emerald green, the waves of ethereal white curtains, just dancing souls before our upturned eyes. I tried to get as much of the mythology of Aurora in as I could. I hope everybody likes it.
I think you did fairly well. It's a beautiful poem. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
For those new to the center, I know Paul's heard me refer to him often as our resident poet. And when he can, he certainly offers one of his phenomenal poems at our meetings. So thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up on our agenda is our very first speaker, Tarek El Wazzi. And I'm hoping I pronounced your name right.
No, you got it.
I first met Tarek, I guess, about 2 weeks after you arrived in Canada, thereabouts.
Yeah.
He came to our Nova East Star party last summer, he and his wife, both. And it was wonderful having a chat with him. And he agreed at that point to present at some point when we would like to invite him. So we did, and he agreed, and we're very grateful.
And thank you for the opportunity also.
I'll just read a little bit here on your autobiography. You started street photography in 2010, and then joined other photographers and formed a group called the Night Collective in 2011. There were weekly outings at night to different cities, villages in Lebanon, which is Tarek's home country. Gradually, they shifted to nightscapes, and since then, he's been heavily engaged in this beautiful genre of photography. He's traveled to many countries, such as Iceland, Cyprus, Jordan, and Egypt, to capture the beauty of their night skies and the diversity in their landscapes. So without further ado, Tarek, I will hand the floor to you, and we welcome your presentation. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me also on this presentation. So yes, as Judy described, I started in 2010, and it was street photography with no intentions of going into night photography and that genre. But then gradually that shifted, and I discovered this group called Night Collective. And eventually we started off in the cities, and it was quite interesting and difficult at the time. But then we shifted towards the villages and mountains and landscapes. I'll go further into why we shifted to this genre in the presentation. And since then, it's been an amazing journey and beautiful experience. And hopefully, I'm hoping to continue in the domain here in Nova Scotia. So I'm going to start off with the presentation, and I hope it works out. I'm going to share my screen. Right. Let me expand it. It's clear for everyone?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Good.
It's good.
All right, so we'll get started.
Yeah.
So, night photography by me, photography. So this is a brief introduction of myself. I'm an employee by day and photographer by weekend or by nights. I started off long time ago with the Kodak C330, which is a very small camera, and it was horrible to use. But then gradually I shifted from different cameras onto the one I currently have, which is the Canon 6D, which I love. It's amazing for night photography. Kind of outdated now compared to what's out there, but it's been great. So like I mentioned, my first group was called Beirut Street Photographers. So we used to go on to different villages and cities throughout Lebanon to capture the street life in these areas. And then I shifted to Night Collective. So it was kind of street photography, but at night. This is my logo. There's a duck. And just to clarify why there's a duck, my family name is Wazzi, and Wazzi means goose. So I thought, why not have a goose as my logo with my name next to it? So that's the description of my logo. And this is me in Iceland. This was in Jokursarlen. I walked really far, as far as I can, and I reached this spot, which was beautiful. There was also, I think, sea lions at the back. Photography wise, night photography wise, I've been to these countries. So Iceland, Lebanon, of course, Egypt. I visited the White Desert and the Black Desert over there. We stayed for around 5 days camping with two guides, myself and my friend, and two guides. And it was one of the best experiences I had. We didn't shower for 5 days. We're eating and we're camping, just eating from whatever they had in their 4x4, and they took us into really diverse locations in the desert. Cyprus, it's close to my heart because I lived there for 9 years, so I visited a lot. And night sky there, it's really good. There's not that much light pollution, so and the landscape is also diverse. Canada, I'm still discovering Nova Scotia step by step. I've taken some pictures here, and Jordan as well, the Wadi Rum. Unfortunately, I couldn't find photos from Wadi Rum. I think I lost the file, but I had some good photos there. First of all, I'll talk about photography in Lebanon in general. So there's many diverse locations in Lebanon. On the left are the main areas we used to go to as a group. Most of them are like an hour, 2 hour away from Beirut, the capital. And on the right side, these are not my photos. I got them off Google Photos. There's Faluga, there's Tanourin, Aurora, Paraya, and Amoa. These are some of the best locations to capture landscape in Lebanon. They're diverse. There's high mountains, you have lakes, there's rivers, there's forests, there's fogs. There's a lot of diversity in them. And what usually helps us in Lebanon is the weather conditions. We go through 4 seasons in general. So you always capture something different in depending on the season you're at. My favorite personally is Aura. It's the one to the bottom right where there's this hiker. We've been there so many times. It's a huge area filled with artificial lakes, mountains on either side. And anytime you go there, you're guaranteed to get something beautiful. In winter, it's even better. It's freezing cold over there. It could reach -15 in some cases, but that makes it the better experience. Now, just a brief discovery. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of photography in Lebanon. So, as I said, its landscape is very diverse. It's easy to reach because of its small size, which is 10,452 square kilometers. So, getting to most of the locations I mentioned takes us like maybe an hour, 2 hours, depending on the traffic and several conditions. Photography community is huge in Lebanon, and it's been growing for the past 10, 11 years. Night photography, as the group that we started, Night Collective, we were kind of the ones that kind of introduced night photography to Lebanon. It existed before, but not in abundance as our group helped in. And regarding the locations, it's got really high mountains. So there's Tanourin, Sanin, Paraya. Most of them are like 1,500, 1,700 to 2,000 meters. And it takes you like an hour and a half to get there. So you could shoot from below the mountain, on top of the mountain, in the middle of the mountain, wherever you are, and you're guaranteed amazing photos. We have a rugged landscape, so it's not just simple flat or soft mountains. They're very rocky. There's lots of trees in them, and that just adds to the beauty of the photos. The nice thing about being there and the whole outing is that usually on the way back, you're always guaranteed to find a place to have breakfast at 5 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. So just have a talk of what you captured and the whole experience. We could camp anywhere in Lebanon, kind of anywhere. I'll go into that later on. But camping is also, there's no, like, I noticed here in Canada, there's areas you have to book, for example, your camping spot or time or etc. In Lebanon, it's just mainly open anywhere you want. Now, we move on to the cons of photography in Lebanon, or the difficulty in that. There's lots of light pollution. Even though we have a very bad electricity crisis there, there's still lots of light pollution. And gradually, since we started till now, it got harder and harder to find dark spots. So we have to go really far outside or to new locations we're not very familiar with, which doesn't always help. The political and security situation is kind of a worry sometimes, depending on where you are in Lebanon and what village you're going to. Mainly, usually towards the south, it's not always recommended to go there unless you know the area well, or you know people that are in the villages you want to go to, just so you have some added protection or some peace of mind that you're safe. If in case someone comes, you have contacts that will take care of you.
Tarek?
Gradually, yeah.
I've noticed here, and I thought it was just my screen, but a couple of people have noted in the chat, there are two blue-gray bars across your presentation on the upper, on the top, right where your mouse is.
Now,
No. Okay, now it's moved.
no, it's the okay, it's the options. It's the options bar. Okay, let me see. No. Oh, now is it better now?
No, now it's in the middle.
No.
All gone. Wonderful.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
perfect. Okay. Yeah, it was the bar, the Zoom bar. I think I don't know. It chosen for the others. Okay, it's good now. It's clear.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, perfect. Yeah. So the cons of photography, as I was saying, it's mainly the you have to know where you go to. Now, most of our outings were towards the north. First of all, the landscape there, it's different than the south. South is more, it's not as rugged as the north. There's more slopes rather than huge mountains there. And it was just safer for us and more comforting for us to go towards the north. So for most of the time, we went to these areas. Now, gradually, as if everyone's aware, the situation in Lebanon got worse since 2018, 19 to now. So as photography in general, we just we put it on the side because of other situations that were not helping us. It got very costly. Other factors also played a role in making us shift from this genre. Now we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so this is just a brief description of how this state of Lebanon currently. So we went through many problems since 2019. There was the economic collapse, lots of protests, which made it harder for us to go on any photography trips because we didn't know which roads would be blocked, made it very cumbersome. And then there was the Beirut explosion. So all of these played a big role in shifting from what we usually do, which is night photography, into different genres or other things that would occupy our mind. From my point of view, my photography shifted to just to capture the protests and to capture whatever was happening. So these are photos I captured within these couple of years before coming to Canada. The one on the bottom in the middle is the statue of the Lebanese immigrant, which I discovered there's one similar to it also in Halifax, near the waterfront, and they look extremely alike. So it was nice to discover that. And these were captured over the past couple of years before moving here. So it was a very different and new experience for me. It was quite scary capturing the protests because we got really close and they were kind of aggressive. But it was a beautiful experience nonetheless. So now we move on to my photography technique. This photo I captured in Iceland in Jokursarne in 2015, and I think Paul was mentioning about Iceland, and personally, it was such a beautiful experience to capture the Aurora, to see it in front of you, and see its different colors and shapes, and it's something else. So what I usually do whenever I'm out capturing, when I take photos, it's mainly to scout the location. I hike, try to explore whatever location I'm at before deciding what composition, what photo to take. I try to take my time because we have a couple of hours, so it's good. I know the conditions, the moonrise, moonset, Milky Way, where it's going to be, and all that. So I always take many test shots, different angles, different focal length, just to find something that I'm really happy with. What I discovered over time, it's always good to take multiple photos to make sure they're fine. There's no camera shake, there's nothing missing, pictures not in focus and stuff like that. I learned this over time. It's always to check your LCD, to really study your photo on LCD, and it's always guaranteed it's going to be as good as it is on the laptop. But studying it well and going into its details makes a difference between going home and seeing a good photo and going home and being disappointed, which I've been disappointed a lot of times. But because of that, I learned how to improve my photography. there's always, I always try to make use of whatever is out there in the night sky or in my foreground to have a photo that kind of has a description, has a story, has something about it. We'll go into that later on. Now I'm gonna go briefly into this. So like tools for night photography based on what I learned during time and my experience. There's always different sources of light you could use, like the moonlight. There's city and village lights. They always help you. They always help color your foreground. Depending on, of course, how strong they are. If they're really strong, they ruin your photos, and this happens mostly. You could always incorporate car trails, road lights, just to add some life into your picture. Fog, mists, these also help a lot. I also noticed the shadows that come out that appeared because of the moonlight. They also play an interesting part in the photo, and you could use these to your advantage. I used to go through a lot. I used to do a lot of light painting for a while. Then I lost interest in it. But this also helps if you want to light. For example, you have a tree or something, and it looks very nice in your photo, but it's dark. A bit of soft light adds life to this subject, and it adds a bit of depth if you want something in the background from the night sky, like the Milky Way or some constellation. Personally, I always think there's a lot of geometry in photos. There's leading lines, there's symmetry, and I always try to incorporate that into my pictures. Exposure is always essential. Too much ISO and your photo is ruined. Now, new cameras, I think they could handle really high ISO. Mine can't. It's mainly 3,000 to 100, pushing it to 4,000, 5,000. So I'm kind of stuck with that for a while. Again, highlights, shadows. If you end up having a really underexposed picture, there's not much you could do in the editing to make sure it comes out in really good quality. You might get a lot of noise. So these are essential in capturing your photo, capturing a good photo. Gears I use, I think everyone uses these: tripods, headlamps, remote triggers to avoid any camera shake. What's important is really good clothing, especially in winter, hiking shoes, warm jackets, etc. Just to not, because if you're not feeling comfortable, you will not take good photos, I think. I always have water with me no matter what, and phone and backup battery in case something happens. This photo, I took it in Fallujah, and I actually stumbled upon these bee houses by chance. I don't know they were there until I walked up onto this hill, and I thought that since the Milky Way is in front of me, they'll both do some interesting line toward the bottom right of the picture. Applications, Planet, it's my favorite application because it has so much information. Helps you plan your trip from A to Z, to plan the Milky Way, its direction, everything. It's a beautiful application, and it's always updated. You could also see the night sky, light pollution, planets, their movements, and all of that. Sun Survey, it's a very simple application, quick use if you want something really quick. Sky View, it's also very basic. I use it from time to time to help just to plan my trips. Usually I'm not a good planner, so I've tried to plan my outings. They never work out. It's always on the spot that I get capture what I want. Now, I'm going to talk about how I compose my photos. These are photos I took from Lebanon, the top right. So this is a cedar tree, and in my opinion, it looks like an eagle, like an eagle flying with its wings open. The left side is mainly warm, while the right side was cold otherwise. So I really like this picture. Bottom left is from Iceland. I can't remember the location, but again, it's a symmetry between left and right. Left is cold, right is there's the Aurora. So I tried to make sure this picture is split in half. Bottom right is the Black Desert from Egypt. I climbed on a really high mountain, and it was extremely windy. So difficult to take this picture, but I got it in the end. Again, what I tried to make it work is the flow in the bottom left points towards the mountain in the middle, while the Milky Way also points to that location. So I always try to have some sort of direction in my photos, or something my eyes could follow.
There's a gray line across the top again, Tarek, sorry.
I think if I move the mouse, it's gone. Oh, there's something in the middle, I think.
In the middle.
Yeah, it's gone.
Good.
I'm gonna try not to touch the table. I think it's when I move it appears. Sorry about that. So here there's another example of different composition concepts I follow. Like on the left side, I try to split it up into 3 parts: the rocks in the bottom, then there's the mountain in the middle, and the Milky Way is on top. They're kind of parallel to each other, and your eye just starts from the bottom and goes up to the Milky Way. The right side, it's something different. I used I think this is a river or a wetland. I use its flow. Take your eye directly towards the Milky Way, and you just look up. So it's just one line that flows up upwards. Now it's moving. 1 second. Okay. Now here, this is different approach I try to follow. I don't always get this chance. It just depends on the subjects in my picture. On the left side, it's in the white desert of Egypt, and these are limestones. And again, where I compose this photo, it's as if it's a table, so you could sit there and you could just look towards the Milky Way. The middle one is the tree in an area called Amua. It's like 3 hours away. Beautiful area. It was a large land that was owned by a person, and he told us just do whatever you want inside, walk around as much as you want. So I took this tree as if it's looking up towards the Milky Way, and I lit it up with my torch. Slight lighting. Now, further in the presentation, I describe how I got to this composition. To the right side is also the white desert, and in this area, the beauty of this area is that most of these rocks, when you look at them, you could imagine as if there's something like an owl, a frog, a cat, or whatever. This one, in my opinion, the way I saw it, it's like an old man looking up towards the Milky Way. So I believe others could see it differently, but this is how I saw it. I also try to utilize the moon as much as I can. So in these photos, these are all in Lebanon, Tanourin, Faraya, and another one in Faraya. It's a natural bridge, the one on the bottom right. So I try to use the light, the moonlight, to light up my foreground, and I try to have spikes. Some people don't like this. I don't know. I like it, in my opinion. And I think it just adds a nice feel to the pictures. Moonlight, in my opinion, it always adds something to the feel of any picture. Bottom right, I used the moonlight to light up the river, and because it was very dark inside. Again, here, this is another approach of utilizing the moonlight. It's not direct, so I just try to use its light to light up my subjects without having it in my photo. The one on top right is in Larnaca, Cyprus, and this is like 15 minutes away from our house. A beautiful location over there, and all of these are wind turbines in that area. Bottom left is Aurora. Like I said, it's one of my favorite locations, and we have so many photos from that area. It's endless. Okay, now here I always try to, like I mentioned before, I always try to incorporate objects of the night sky in my photos. So the one on the top left is in Cyprus. I don't know if Saturn's visible, it's to the left, and there's Venus, and I believe Jupiter is somewhere on the right side, and there's the Milky Way, and at the same time, I think the sunrise was starting to happen. So I captured more than one objects in this photo, and I think I stayed there for like 4 hours to finally find the perfect time, the perfect photo. Bottom left is an area called Barqa. It's I think 3 hours away from Beirut, and again, this is the Orion constellation, and I lit up the large tree on the left side just to add some depth in my picture between the tree and Orion. Right side is a moon halo, an area called Erzej. It's a very rocky location. Now it's kind of light polluted, so we stopped going there for maybe the past couple of years, I think. Again, other examples of using the objects of night sky. There's the Aurora in Iceland. There's the meteor showers. This was during Perseids meteor shower, and we took this in a reserve called the Shuf Reserve. It's the largest reserve in Lebanon. To the right side, it's the Neowise comet. I took this from my parents' house over Beirut. We got lucky; we were able to see it from the city, even though there was lots of light pollution. There's something I also try to use is different aspect ratios. So sometimes I use square format, sometimes I use 16:9, give it this panoramic feel to it. And the bottom right is in Nova Scotia. It's in Duncan's Cove. So this was the first picture I take. No, this was the second time. The first time was with the RASC. So this is the second time I take the Milky Way in Nova Scotia. And I've been trying to shift towards square format for a while. It's much more difficult because you're kind of constrained with the small perspective that you have, but it adds more it makes you make an effort into capturing whatever you want in a different different formats. So it helps improving your creativity. Right. Again, there's focus. I always try to play around with the focus. Sometimes I blur the background, the night sky. So here on the left side, the trees. 1 second. So on the left side, the background is blurred, and the focus was the tree. The middle, I was just playing around with this. I don't know if it's. I don't always use this approach, which is blur the foreground. So here the moon is in focus. The right side, I focus stack, which is something I try to do as much as I can whenever it's suitable for the picture. This is an area called Yamuni. It's a weed plantation area. It was a very interesting trip, and a friend of ours here on the that called Rita Najm was with us on this trip, and it was 2 nights, but it was a really nice experience over there. And I'm gonna go briefly into my how usually my photo evolves. So I take test shots as much as I can. Once I'm satisfied with the composition, I then work on the lighting of my foreground if I need it. So I started off from point 1, which I noticed the tree on the left side is kind of disturbing, kind of distracting, I guess. So I shifted, and at the time I realized that okay, the Milky Way is now nicely positioned, the tree is nicely positioned. It's as if it's looking towards the Milky Way, and then I worked on lighting it up. I think I did several attempts to get the light perfectly there because I had to move to one spot to light it up and then come back to my camera within 15 seconds. But and in the end, this is what I got. It took me around maybe 30 minutes to finish this picture, to be satisfied with the whole setup of the picture. So this kind of this concludes my photography. And now I'm going to go into to show you photos of fellow photographers in Lebanon. First one is Daniel Karakash. He's a deep sky astrophotographer.
Great. Oh, never
yeah.
mind. It's gone. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So he's a deep sky astrophotographer, and this is a picture of his solar prominence on the sun. And this one, he took it. This is called the Trefid Nebula, located in Sagittarius. Right. Now, these are the details of his picture. It took him, I think, 9 hours to capture. Oh no, captured over 4 nights. So it took him 4 nights to capture all the details for this picture. And he's a really active night sky photographer, a deep sky photographer from Lebanon also. This is a third picture called the Rosetta Nebula. Right. Now, another photographer, and she's with us she's watching this presentation from Lebanon also. She's called Rita Najm. So I'm going to show two photos from her. This is the Sagittarius arm. I don't know where she took this picture. It's in somewhere in Lebanon, but not sure where. And this is the the other one it's from Tannurin. Yeah. This is another one. And this is also from Tannurin. We used to go there a lot because it's a huge reserve and it's very diverse, and it's not polluted. There's no like pollution over there.
She's captured 3 constellations in that photo.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And ending notes, just the final notes of my presentation. Personally, and this is I always explain this. It's the end product or the end photo is not the main important thing of I think it's the whole experience. So there's the road trips, there's the friendship, the time you spend with your friends, the eating, cooking at night, camping, etc. That's what's more important for me than the end product. if you get a good shot, it's always a pleasure. If you don't, it's disappointing. But then there's always the experience that comes with that outing. So these are pictures I put from my different experiences. My car on top left, which I sold before leaving, was like my second home. I used to sleep in it, cook in it, everything was in it. We packed so much into it, and we just go on road trips. The cooking, sleeping outside, etc. And I think this is the most important aspect in photography for me. It's always the experience. You have to enjoy it as much as you can. The photo is just the end product of that enjoyment. These are photos, myself and our friends in Iceland, in Jordan, and in Lebanon. And yeah, it's always good memories. It's always memories that you keep with you on each outing you take. You go on. And I guess that, yeah, well, that's it. Right? So final points: take it easy, be patient, just enjoy it, be safe. Always consider safety. We had some over the past 10 years. We had some times where we got injured. We had some close calls, etc. So always be careful. Practice, and educate yourself to always improve. There's always change. There's always stuff to learn. You're never, fully accomplished in whatever genre of photography you're into. And I guess it's not the social media that you should focus on unless it's your job. That's my personal opinion on it. Take photos for your own satisfaction. Post whatever you feel is good, not what others would feel is good. And I guess never get bored of the location you go to. There's always something new to capture in any location you're at, even if you visit it 10, 15, 20 times. And I guess that's it. It's the end of the presentation.
Thanks so much, Tarek.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this back into standard. Oop, try the gallery. Where aren't that? Oops. Oh, there you are. Okay. Any questions for Tarek?
I've got a question about the photos that had the moon in it. There was an amazing specular rays coming off the moon. What f-stop?
I think this is a couple of years back. I think it was like f14, f14, f13, 15, something around that range. It was yeah, around that range, I think. Not exactly sure. I can't remember it. I have to check the details of the metadata of that picture, but around that range.
Okay, good. That probably explains the nice pattern that showed up.
Yeah. And the lens makes a difference. I think this one was the kit lens that came with the Canon 24, the Canon 6D, so it's 24-105. I had a previous lens that didn't provide these beautiful spikes. So also that makes a difference.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
You comment about that one place in Lebanon that you go to regularly. Do you go there because it changes throughout the seasons? Because the view and the perspective changes throughout the seasons? Because you showed a number of pictures at that one site from different times of the year. So
now that location, it has many reasons we go there. It changes a lot during the seasons. Yeah. So in summer, spring, there's lots of grass. In summer, it's kind of dry. The lakes also change in amount of water depending on the season. In winter, it's it snows a lot over there. So snow also adds a lot of diversity in that picture, in that location. And it's a large location. There's around, I think, 10, 12 lakes over there. And there's a huge mountain range that's around that land that has the lakes. So you could even go up on top of the mountain spots. There's a monastery also over there. And there's even a higher spot over the monastery. To the left side, there's a huge mountain range, and then there's another set of mountains. And if you go down inside between the lakes, there's also different perspectives you could take, because then you could shoot the mountains from down, looking up. So it's an endless location. Yeah. And it's good to camp there. We used to cook there. We sleep there. It's very safe. So yeah. I think it was like an hour and a half away it takes us like an hour and a half to get there, maximum. So yeah.
Yeah, your presentation not only had phenomenal photographs, but it also educated us as to the diversity of the landscapes that there are in Lebanon that I don't think many of us truly appreciated were there, especially
Yeah,
snow.
yeah. Yeah, it's very diverse. You have mountains that are high. The highest mountain in Lebanon is 3,067 meters, I think. I've hiked it once when I was younger. And we went there first on night photography, but because it's so high and it's such a dry area under us, all the villages below us just lit up the sky. So from a night photography perspective, it wasn't helpful, but from just as an experience and to scenery wise, it's amazing. There's an area next to it called Ayun Urghosh. It's a bit lower, and it's surrounded by high mountains, and it's a very it's like a wetland, and there's a big lake over there. We used to go there a lot, but it takes a long time to get there now. So I think last time we went there was maybe 5 years ago. But it's endless also.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. That your
Thank you.
photos were phenomenal, and it was really neat to see a part of the world that many of us have not been to. So it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad I got to do this presentation.
We're going to take a 10-minute break. I will start my timer, and we'll be back in 10 minutes, and we'll have Jeremy. We've had the hot world. Now we're going to look at the cold world and chasing borealis. So we'll see you in 10. You can stay online and chat informally. I will temporarily
share the screen properly.
All right. Well, welcome back. And our second presenter is now up, and it's Jeremy. Is it Kuzub? Is that pronounced correctly?
Sure, Kuzub. I've heard it pronounced as well.
All right. Well, very good. It's your name. I shall pronounce accordingly. He's originally from Alberta, but he is now residing in Cow Bay, Nova Scotia, and he recently became a member of our center. So again, welcome, Jeremy. He is also a member of aurorasaurus.org, which is an organization that promotes citizen science and contributes to Aurora research through crowdsourced reporting. He started the Capture North project in 2019 to share techniques in auroral photography and to develop new ways of capturing and sharing aurora imagery. So, Jeremy, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm sure other members are as well. So I will let you take it away, and welcome.
Sure. Thank you very much, Judy. And yeah, I've been a RASC Halifax member since this morning. Transferred over from RASC Ottawa, where I was doing some work for several years. And yeah, I'm happy to present today. So I'm just going to set up the screen sharing, and hopefully I'm doing it correctly here. You're going to see your faces for a moment before I hit play on the presentation. And can you see the introductory slide clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. And my audio is good?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get started. First of all, thank you so much for letting me speak. And I hope this is a conversation too. I just moved, my spouse is from Moncton, and we decided to move to Cow Bay for a little bit more room and a little bit darker skies out here. But originally I was seeing the Northern Lights where I grew up in and around Edmonton and the Cold Lake Forces Base in Saskatchewan. And it was a common thing, and it becomes a part of your life. And then there's some continuity there. What I wanted to talk about a bit was something that a few of us, it sounds like we've seen, like Paul on his travels and Tarek on his travels to Iceland, is there's this sort of donut of auroral activity that goes around the geomagnetic North Pole, kind of like a crown on the top and the bottom of the Earth, that connects all those countries that are under this auroral oval, and Canada happens to be one of the bigger ones with some good access to it. And I've taken some time to travel around and wanted to share what I've seen, but also start a conversation about how we can put together a resource, maybe about how we can set up travel for people to take that direct flight to Iceland, how to time your visits, how to get the most wonderful photos and memories of your Aurora chase. So that's what I'll be talking about a little bit today. And I'm by no means an expert on solar activity, the magnetosphere, photography, but I try and holistically combine those things to get the things that I want. I had some time after working in the tech sector in Ottawa to take a bit of time to explore some places I've been meaning to explore: Yellowknife, Iceland, the Yukon, and in the course of that, developed some sort of techniques to make sure I was finding aurora that weren't covered with clouds. And it was really making your own luck. It was figuring out what the statistics were and making sure they came out in your favor. And a lot of it comes down to having an open mind, staying awake, being optimistic, and learning just enough about the sun and the magnetosphere and the community to plan your travels. And so what a lot of what you might hear today, Tarek touched on, especially on landscape and traveling and being optimistic and making sure that getting that one photo is not the heart of your journey. The journey is why you go on a trip somewhere and everything surrounding that photo. Aurora is a big part of Canada. If you take Yellowknife, for example, which is sort of the Aurora destination within Canada for tourists, they have 6 times more visitors than their population. It was 120,000 visitors just before the pandemic. The Alberta Aurora Chasers Facebook group is the largest Aurora group in the world at 200,000 members. The Royal Canadian Mint, Canada Post have stamps. For example, Alan Dyer had 2 stamps, one of which was an Aurora photograph that he took. And I don't know how many Aurora glow-in-the-dark coins they've minted, but I guess they're very popular. So it really is a part of our Canadian identity. It also links a lot of the northern countries together. The interesting thing about Aurora is that it covers the whole sky and it changes. It's really your personal sky, and your photos and videos will be unique because just like a Rorschach test or ink drops in water, the aurora are always changing, and the photo that you get will be like nobody else's photo from that venue, from that location. You really have captured something never seen before. It's like if every planetary nebula and every galaxy changed every night in your deep sky photography. That's sort of what it feels like. And this is kind of the opposite of deep sky photography, but it really is feeling like you are in the middle of something cosmic. And like I mentioned before, you try and get the photo, but there's also so much about the destinations. Here's just a couple from the last trip to Yellowknife last week. And there's the ice highway in the top right. There's the burn on the bay in the bottom right, which is where they burn all the shipping pallets out on the bay to symbolize the beginning of spring. And the snow sculptures, the ice sculptures, and snow castle on the left that are built every year as part of the Long John Jamboree. One interesting thing is that you think, well, I can't really name anything in the night sky. Well, with Northern Lights or with Aurora, if you see it, you can name it. If you see a shape like this space rooster I saw last week, go ahead and name it. Call it yours. Nobody else is going to have a photo of it. Although we'll touch on that a bit later. There was one formation that many people saw and actually gave it a name. So if you ever felt like naming an object in the sky, this is definitely the way to approach sky photography. We did a survey for a different project. This was in simulating the aurora. And this was kind of interesting. It applies to a lot of the way people form great memories, is that if you could relive your greatest memory or gamble on maybe getting a better future memory, maybe worse. In our survey that we took just on a Google Forms survey, it was like a 9-to-1 ratio. People would rather gamble on a future great memory and maybe never having that great memory again than reliving an existing memory. And that applies to the aurora, where you could see the best night ever of aurora again and again, or maybe expand your travels and maybe find something better. So that tells me that people really are willing to risk exploration rather than sort of dwell on the past, no matter how good it was. And that really is why aurora chasing is something, just like storm chasing, just like capturing the next deep sky object, is captivating for us. So when we talk about making our own luck, it's some obvious things like don't take pictures of clouds, don't take pictures during the daytime, but it really comes down to the right place, the right time, understanding your equipment and tempering your expectations. So these are some of the things we're going to touch on. I'm not going to read them out to you here, but you'll see them throughout the presentation. And in the background, you'll actually see some real-time video from Yellowknife of a moment when the aurora are really moving overhead, and that's in real time, 24 frames a second. So we'll talk about some 8 sort of subjects here very quickly, and we'll focus a bit on a trip diary too, to show you what some of the possibilities are, at least that I experienced. And I know some of you have some amazing experiences too, and I hope to hear about them either online or offline in the future too. And I'm very eager to learn more about photography out here in Cow Bay and in Nova Scotia too. So I am new to the area, and I'd love your feedback, inputs, go on some trips, and know where to set up my camera. Speaking of which, this is taken from Lawrencetown Beach with an 85mm f1.8. And this was actually February 27th, a month before the big equinox storm that happened last week. And this is looking north, and you'll see some aurora kind of greenish to the bottom, tempered with the red from the blue scattering of the sky that far on the horizon. And then you're seeing some different colors of purple and reds further up in the ionosphere that are being excited by some of the influx of solar particles. So even this far south, during this time of solar activity, if we create some luck by going out at the right time, this is just before dawn when I thought there'd be too much ambient light, we can still find something interesting and unique. But let's talk a little bit about that storm that happened last week that was in the news everywhere. As you can see from this tweet from one of the heliophysicists, this is right before it happened. It sounded kind of tempered. It sounds, oh, there's some coronal mass ejections that are slightly more directed towards Earth, but there's kind of double coronal mass ejections and a high-speed solar wind. We're not really sure what these NASA prediction models, as you can see below, are going to do. And little did they know it would result in one of the biggest geomagnetic storms and auroral events in many years. So you can see we still don't know a lot about forecasting and making our own luck by predicting what's going to happen even a week in advance. What actually happened is using the KP index, which is a measure of geomagnetic activity measured by magnetometers throughout the world and sort of combined in a standardized way that goes back decades. You can see that red area of bar graph where we went up to a KP, almost a KP8. And you think of it like the Richter scale in earthquakes. It's pseudo-logarithmic or pseudo-exponential, say one of those two. And things just got crazy right around March 23rd, 24th. And that was the opportunity for people to see things. I wrote a little simulation web-based interface that takes those graphs and actually maps them to a virtual simulation of what you might see in the aurora. And as you go from KP3 to KP5, the colors get more intense. The aurora move further south towards you and appear more overhead, and they tend to move faster. And KP8 just doesn't happen that often, as you can see in the rendering. And I'll leave you to go to that website to see what a KP9 looks like. So this KP index is something you'll hear about again and again in relation to aurora activity, and think of it like the Richter scale or the incoming weather. When I mentioned before that the auroral zone where you're going to see the aurora is like a crown over the geomagnetic North Pole, which is kind of in northern Canada at this time. This is what it really looks like in terms of a simulation. On the left is a quiet night of aurora. And these aren't real colors. These are actually color mapped to probability of seeing the aurora. On a quiet night on the left, they're further north in the auroral zone, just over Yellowknife and over northern Labrador and northern Quebec and even further north in James Bay. But at highly active times, like we saw on March 23rd, 24th, that auroral oval expands in width and also moves south. It's like the crown gets bigger and slides down the earth, just like a hat that's too big for you. And as you can see, it starts to touch on Nova Scotia, for example, and go into the northern US. And this is what the warning from the Space Weather Prediction Center showed for that oval on the night of that 23rd, 24th storm. And you can see the probability of aurora overhead in red, very high probability. And then you also see a view line below that. There's that red line that stretches to the very south into Chicago and into Nova Scotia again. And that's because the aurora are 100 to 300 to 400 kilometers up. And so we have a view line that goes a lot further than the horizon, somewhere about 500 kilometers further than when they're overhead. So we did have an opportunity last week, had it not been cloudy, to see the aurora again. Speaking of luck, I was fortunately up in Yellowknife during that event, and here's me out on a frozen lake. And frozen lakes are wonderful for aurora photography because it keeps the trees and the horizon relatively low. There's low traffic and just a lot of room to set up. And so I'd set up my own camera for taking photography, but also brought up some automated cameras like you can see on the right that take all sky photography. And we can talk about those a little bit later on. So speaking of luck, I was reasonably prepared in the right place with the right equipment and the right clothing to stay warm and stay out on the lake at -25 for that night. And the sky was clear, and it was only -25, which is relatively warm when there's no wind up there. So as long as you've got your hand warmers, proper jacket, really good boots, and a running car that's not too far away to warm up, or a fire, you're doing okay. And you can see the magnetometers were going crazy that night. These are the CanMOS magnetometers that are at various latitudes, including Yellowknife and all the way down to Ottawa and Victoria and St. John's. So that was a pretty remarkable night. And the magnetometer disturbances directly correlate with how much sort of storm activity you're going to see overhead. And these are the kind of photos you can get on a night like March 23rd, 24th up in Yellowknife. And a lot of photos like this were captured as far south as Calgary. The aurora are directly overhead. And so those auroral curtains actually look like warp speed from Star Trek or hyperspace from Star Wars, because you're looking directly into the zenith and the rays are coming down all around you. You see the common greens at 557.7 nanometers. But you also see the purples from the mix of red and sort of violet emissions further up in the atmosphere at higher altitudes. That's from molecular nitrogen, I believe, and some oxygen. And the sort of the trees are surrounding there to give it some context too. So that goes back to what Tarek was speaking of having sort of a landscape perspective for this kind of photography to make it a human scale. The other kind of photography you can get is those same curtains, when they withdraw from you a bit, you can now see them from the side instead of from underneath on the left photo. And sometimes it's okay to have things blocking your view, like these coniferous trees that are common up north. Those are light painted with the headlamp, and they just provide a nice foreground context and follow the same eye line. On the right, there's a formation that I like to call churns. That's when the auroral curtain, which interacts with itself because it is an electromagnetic entity, kind of curls up on itself and wraps from a straight curtain when it's calm into a series of twists at various scales, from hundreds of meters all the way up to hundreds of kilometers. And this is one directly overhead at the zenith looking up. So there's a wide variety of forms that you're going to see in the course of days or minutes. And people react to this. This is from Chris Ratzlaff, who runs the largest Facebook group, the Alberta Aurora Chasers, with 200,000 members. You can see on February 27th, where I got that picture from Lawrencetown, it was a G2 or G3 storm. That correlates with a KP6 or KP7 on that scale we saw before. It's just two different names for the same thing. There were, I think, around 200 posts of people that saw it. But in the G4 storm last week, they had 841 posts of people that saw storm level as far south as southern Alberta. So it shows that the stronger the storm, an exponentially increasing number of people are going to see it and report it. And so the luck really comes down to keep an eye on those storm levels and then just going outside someplace dark and setting up the appropriate camera. The aurora are not limited to the people far north, but most of us live within, you know, a few miles of the southern border with the United States. And so as a result, as these big storms move activity visible further south, more people exponentially are going to see it, going from tens of thousands to tens of millions. And that same heliophysicist, when they were doing the debrief on what caused that storm, you can see that some people call this a problem storm because simply that a level of activity was not expected. And it just goes to show that there's a lot of open research going on. And that's why there's a citizen science connection to Aurora right now. And that people taking pictures in their backyards or taking all sky images can very much contribute to understanding the aurora and then understanding the connection to the geomagnetic field around Earth, the solar wind, and the sun. It's all connected, and there's still a lot of modeling that needs to be done. So there's a lot of open questions and a lot of research and a lot of simple questions that you can ask just looking up at the sky. There's not clear answers for yet in the scientific community. Let's talk a little bit about aurora chasing back in the day. And the back in the day really comes down to before digital cameras. 1892 is the first time somebody captured and published an auroral curtain that was on a sensitized silver plate, 210 millimeters f3.5 on a 9 by 12 centimeter plate. But it wasn't until about 60 years later till a commission for Life magazine got the first color images of the aurora up in Canada around Saskatchewan, and you can see the pictures there. They were boosting the ISO, the effective sensitivity of their plates, by pre-exposing them to light. And this sort of sets up the silver halide particles to be more responsive, and it effectively boosted the ISO. Even so, the colors are heavily biased, and you can actually see J.R. Ironman sort of trying to get the frost off of his camera lens and holding the flashlight in his mouth and probably freezing quite a bit, as we're all familiar with being out in cold environments. And there's even snow on his lens cap down there. I wish I could show those people what we can do now with CMOS sensors and SLR cameras and mirrorless cameras. The ISOs, the sensitivities we can shoot at, the signal to noise ratios, they really enable aurora photography. You do not need amazing equipment or amazing lenses anymore to get amazing pictures. You just need to be timely with where you point your camera now. And these are 3 photos from the Yukon up in Destruction Bay, from Iceland up on the west coast, which we'll touch on, and then on Yellowknife, or at Yellowknife behind the Pizza Hut. I was there for a trip for other business and just happened to be in town and captured a picture there with some light pollution from the sodium lights lighting up the forest. And you can really boost the ISO with these full frame cameras. This is ISO 28,000 in real time at 24 frames per second, looking directly overhead. I think this is an f1.8 14 millimeter lens. And you can really see how the aurora transition from overhead curtains with lots of motion and twists all the way to the far horizon. And they start to turn a bit yellow because, again, of that blue light scattering. Right now, we're at the increase of a solar cycle. I don't want to speak too much with this because my confidence is not super high on understanding solar phenomena, but the luck really starts with the fact that the sun is getting more active right now, and it's getting more active than they expected it to get, is really the takeaway from this chart. We expected a fairly quiet solar cycle, but the sunspot number is apparently much higher than that and modeled to go higher. And maybe, I don't know, somebody else could certainly speak to solar activity and sunspots, but there's a direct correlation with the energy that's transmitted to Earth and the amount of aurora we see. And here's just a quick difference between an active sun and a quiet sun. A quiet sun like we saw in 2019, and now more active in 2023, where you're seeing more open field lines, which actually look like holes, or they're called coronal holes. And that means more high-speed solar wind heading outwards towards us, for example, at Earth. And more coronal mass ejection events, which are kind of like the Aurora lottery, big shock waves of dense and fast-moving solar wind that are somewhat unpredictable, but we have to be ready for them as photographers. I tended to look at coronal holes for predicting when to go traveling for the aurora, because they swing around the sun every Carrington rotation every 28 days approximately at the equator. And you'll actually see some other aurora chasers here saying there's a nice little corona hole coming around the east limb. So there's some potential for next week for high-speed solar wind, higher energies, higher densities, and that means more aurora. Those coronal holes are much more predictable than coronal mass ejections. Once that energy reaches Earth, it doesn't just sort of funnel into the top and bottom of the Earth's magnetic field. It actually couples with Earth's magnetic field and compresses the magnetotail, the portion of Earth's magnetic field that is stretched behind it by the solar wind. And in a process that's still being studied and hasn't been fully agreed on by a lot of, and even the Parker Solar Probe was still understanding some of these open questions. Eventually, that compression of the magnetotail causes reconnection and sort of like a short circuit of these magnetic field lines. And that suddenly dumps a whole bunch of particles and energy into those crowns on the top and bottom of Earth. And that's on the scale of minutes and hours. So even though it's a continuous solar wind that may be more or less energetic, more or less dense, as long as it has the right polarity, it will couple with the Earth and cause this periodic activity over the course of a night. And we monitor this with aircraft or with spacecraft like Discover that sits between the Earth and the sun, and maybe gives us a few hours of warning for particular activity. And here's what it looks like at, say, Space Weather Live, which is sort of the go-to website for looking at what the real-time activity is from these probes. And you can see that there's the solar wind speed on the top left, how fast it's going. 396 kilometers is average. 600 was last week, which is highly elevated. And the energy varies proportionately with that, or actually to the square of that. The density, of course, how many particles are coming at us at once, matters for solar activity, because it just means more flux, more energy coming into the magnetosphere. And that's on the bottom left. But on the top right, we see the magnetic field, the interplanetary magnetic field, and that's really how strong coupling can happen between the solar wind and the Earth's magnetic field, because the Earth's geomagnetic field is sort of like on Star Trek, the shields are up. That's what protects us. But when the polarity on the bottom right of the wind shifts to south, they call it a BZ, that is south facing, or negative BZ. That means that the polarity of the solar wind and the polarity of the Earth's geomagnetic field are opposite of each other. And just like two magnets you hold in your hand north to south, they are now attracted and they couple. And that means the energy can be coupled to Earth's geomagnetic field. So that's the one that aurora chasers really look for, is that red graph of a negative BZ. And that means whatever energy is coming towards the Earth from the sun is going to be coupled into the geomagnetic field and then into aurora. And here's a correlation of an all-sky image, a time lapse, and the local magnetometer readings. And you can see that the sky gets crazy in direct correlation with that magnetic field disturbance. And it just shows the connection between the geomagnetic field disturbance and what you're visibly going to see at that localized location overhead. And so that's a substorm occurring over maybe 15 minutes. And then you can see it sort of recovering here, and it's still a bit active and churned up, but then it quiets down again. And that's that periodic cycle you see from the reconnection of that magnetotail that can happen several times a night. And that's why you don't go to bed at midnight. You stay out till 3, 4 a.m. because these periodic explosions of light can happen almost at any time. But what is this light we're seeing? What are all these colors we've seen in the last month or so? Well, they are specific emission lines coming from our atmosphere, and they are primarily a few species: atomic oxygen, ionized nitrogen, and nitrogen molecules at various altitudes. And I thought we'd try and build an aurora curtain. This is typically what you see in most photos of the aurora because our eyes are sensitive to it, and it's a typical energy band for electrons to pour down and stimulate Earth's atmosphere to emit light at 557.7 nanometers for atomic oxygen between 100 and 250 kilometers altitude. If those electrons, with the higher solar wind speed, they charge up the geomagnetic field more, they can hit a little further down Earth's atmosphere between 80 and 100 kilometers. And they hit molecular nitrogen, which causes this beautiful magenta that also moves very quickly at the very base of auroral curtains. And when you see videos of people saying the sky came alive and things are moving almost faster than the eye can see, you're typically seeing that molecular nitrogen at the very lowest altitudes before sort of any quenching happens. Any lower than that, and the atmosphere is just too dense. It's like bullets into water. They stop immediately and there's no more light emission. So very active high-speed aurora can result, and you'll see it as this molecular nitrogen. It's just amazing to see in person. But a lot of what you see as you get further away from being directly under the aurora are the ionized molecular nitrogen that go all the way from 80 to above 250 kilometers, which emit these violet emission lines, a whole series of them that are very beautiful. And they also lighten the green from kind of a lime green into a paler green because there's that overlap. And then further up, all the way up to 400 kilometers, and even where the International Space Station orbits through, there's the atomic oxygen, and that blends its reds with the violets of ionized molecular nitrogen to form this beautiful gradient of purple to red. And that's what you saw in the Lawrencetown photo and what you see at these further south latitudes. We're looking over the horizon to the very top of the aurora. And those colors are more prominent when there's more activity. And that's why you see those deep red aurora photos further south, like we did last week, when there's more auroral activity. There's more red in the aurora, and more people see it further south because it's a higher altitude. This is a formation called the Olympic Rings that happened last year. And everybody took a picture of it because they thought, wow, there's these 4 perfect rings in the sky. And everybody, meaning in the Alberta Aurora Chasers Facebook group, they all had pictures of the same set of weird space rings above them. And so I assembled the photos as an animated GIF in terms of their latitude, all the way from southern Alberta, northern Alberta, across 1,000 kilometers. And it really gives you an idea that at the same moment, within 1 minute, all these photos were taken at different latitudes. But this formation is between 100 and, say, 300 kilometers up. And so you really get a sense of parallax and 3 dimensions in the atmosphere that's made clear by this sort of citizen science contribution by all pulling out their cell phones and taking pictures at the same time. So again, there's really this opportunity to understand more about structure based on the fact that people like to look up and take pictures of the aurora. Here's just that KP scale again that we use to measure aurora. It really is measured or integrated over 3-hour periods. And that's sort of a traditional way of the way magnetic stations measured and collected their data together, but it's actually reported these days every 5 minutes. So something to keep in mind when they say there's a strong magnetic storm, it's really further up that exponential scale. Most nights we're at KP0, KP1, KP2. The last few nights there was KP4 and 5, which is sort of halfway up the scale, but not something we'll see in Nova Scotia. But KP7, KP8 we will see on the northern horizon. And this is the difference between those short-term forecasts of a few hours and long-term forecasts, which are built on the idea that the sun's going to rotate around every 28 days. So we can predict we're probably going to see the same solar wind conditions every 28 days. And these are the two kinds of forecasts you'll get, neither of which is incredibly accurate, but it gives you something to go by. And here's an example of what you can see at latitudes like Ottawa from 2017 during a KP7 event. There's the red on the horizon. And these aurora are from after local midnight, where instead of curtains, they're kind of these blinking, pulsating rags of aurora. And that's a common difference between before midnight and after midnight auroral forms. So, you know, us in Nova Scotia should always be keeping an eye out when there's these strong storms, because there's some great opportunities for photography. And if you go to the Alberta Aurora Chasers every month, they post their predicted KP levels for the month. And of course, they'll miss out some detail and some unexpected coronal mass ejections, but it's a good baseline to maybe plan your travels. And also the Space Weather Prediction Center will have their reports periodically too. And here's a correlation between the KP index and how far south you can generally see the aurora. And so for us in Nova Scotia, where we're looking at the G3, which is the same as the KP7 or KP8 level, and that's when we're probably going to see the aurora. Anything less active than that, it's probably too far north for us to see. And here's the virus imager actually showing the auroral oval in, I'm not sure what spectral frequency, it might be infrared, it might be visible. And you can see it's 1,000 kilometers north of, say, the Great Lakes. You're not going to see it. But a more active night, you can see it's only 500 kilometers north of the Great Lakes. And that means people are going to see it on the horizon. So that's a direct visual evidence from a satellite that the more energy, the further south we're going to see the aurora. Now, getting back to Earth, I guess, the aurora photography is a little different than some astrophotography in that, yes, you're out at night. Yes, you have to know your camera inside and out, every button with mittens on. But it also has elements of landscape photography, as Tarek mentioned. You have to have a foreground and framing and really a place for it to matter. Otherwise, it's just this abstract photo of kind of tie-dyed colors. You really want to tie it back to Earth with thinking about how landscape photographers think. It's also like wildlife photography in that you never know what the sky is going to do. They say it's alive, and it's true. It's like a wild animal. It'll be quiet, and suddenly with a lot of activity, it'll be in front of you, behind you, above you. So you also have to wait for hours and be ready for moments of a lot of activity. So aurora photography is maybe a little bit different than doing hundreds of exposures of a DSO. We're thinking in terms of wide angle, and we're thinking in terms of having composition with elements on Earth and being ready at any moment for things to change. And this is an example from Destruction Bay and Kluane National Park in the Yukon, where I visited. This is the image sequence, 1 frame per second in real time that my camera was capturing. And this formation you see in front of you is hundreds and thousands of kilometers across. And this is how quickly it's evolving in real time as the camera's capturing it. So you can also see it's overexposed suddenly. It went from regular exposure to 5 or 6 stops brighter. So you have to be ready to go from a 15-second exposure down to a 1-second exposure with your preparations. You have to be ready with adjusting your camera and pointing it to make a good framing. And for conditions to change that quickly, because the aurora do not move slowly when they're active. The most incredible aurora can move across the sky at the equivalent of hundreds of kilometers per second. You also want a very bright lens. With f-stops and the SLR cameras you buy, say at Best Buy or something, it comes with a kit lens that its widest angles at an f3.5, represented here in the bottom right. It's fairly dark in comparison to a dedicated wide angle high brightness lens like an f1.4. Those are the ones that have a bigger front element and are just basically sucking in more light. You're going to have shorter exposures with a brighter lens, despite it costing more and maybe weighing a little bit more. But with shorter exposures, you capture more fine structure, because as you saw here, if you're taking a 10-second exposure of this, you would get all the blur across here and you'd miss all that fine structure of rays. So really you want to keep your shutter speed as high as possible to get a good exposure with Aurora, because you are capturing a moving object. I tend to want to go as wide as possible, although in southern latitudes, you also want to maybe use a portrait lens, like at that Lawrencetown photo with 85 millimeters. If you're going north for an Aurora trip, you probably want something around 14 to 16 millimeter wide angle lens for a full frame camera, which is the equivalent of 10 or 11 millimeters for an APS-C style camera. And this just shows the difference in framing that you can capture. And you can always crop later in post-processing, because it really has an impact on your photos to have the Aurora going from the far horizon stretching right over your head. It gives that sense of depth. And likewise with the rocks in this case below you, you capture everything right up to your toes, and it really connects the viewer and the photo to the sky. In terms of equipment, you're not looking at big telescopes, you're not looking at sky trackers or anything, because you are doing short exposures. Generally right now I use an A7 III, which is an older budget Sony full frame camera. And right now I've got it right next to me. I'm using a Laowa 15 millimeter f2 lens, which is a manual focus third-party lens. It's not very expensive. But it definitely meets the criteria of what we talked about before. I also use an intervalometer a lot. As you saw in the previous photo, you don't just want to take one picture. You want to have your camera continuously taking photos, and then you adjust it as you go in terms of the exposure time or the ISO. The memory cards are so big now that you can capture all night and not have to worry about using up a memory card. So sometimes you'll even walk around and reposition the camera while it's still taking pictures, and it actually makes for an interesting time-lapse movie showing how you explore. And of course, there's a ball head tripod. You're not looking to position exactly. What you want to be able to do is very quickly and rapidly go from portrait to landscape and pivot around quickly to capture aurora that might be suddenly moving overhead. So again, it's like wildlife photography. You want to use a ball head tripod so you're responsive. And of course, there's safety equipment like hand warmers, keeping your calories up, having a headlamp, maybe having some music for the time you're waiting out there. And especially hockey tape is very useful, because it's like the duct tape of the cold and of Canada. It lets you tape hand warmers to cameras, for example, to keep the batteries from getting too cold. One thing that I just saw today in Alberta Aurora chasers is people tend to keep the lens cap or the UV filters on their cameras when they take pictures of the aurora. And that creates a phenomenon called Newton's rings, which you don't see in regular photography because you're getting full spectrum white light essentially. But aurora is very narrow bands, for example, this green band here. And so you get this effect called effective constructive and destructive interference right in the middle of every photo you took that night of the aurora. So even though it may not be safe, it's worth removing your UV filter when you're taking aurora photos, because it is monochromatic or line emitted light. As Tarek was speaking of, giving composition, these are from Iceland, really connects the human scale. So this is a lighthouse in Western Iceland. And then here's the ocean in a national park there later on in the evening with those rags of aurora as opposed to auroral curtains. In both cases, I was trying to be as careful as I could with the exposure of the foreground as the background. And I'd even take a separate exposure of the foreground or do some light painting, and then take maybe 100 exposures of the background so that I could blend those more in Photoshop if necessary. Another element, and this really comes into fall aurora photography, and the left is near Marsh Lake, which is in the Yukon, right near Whitehorse. And then on the right is Kluane National Park, which is about an hour and a half west of there on a very easy drive in the fall. Having water in the photos basically doubles your aurora and has that reflective element that really gives a sense of scale and connection. I think it looks very beautiful. So that's why a lot of aurora photographers do two trips, one in the fall where the water isn't frozen, and then one in the winter where they can go out on the ice. Another idea is eye path, where we are really having foreground elements that pull you into the picture that lead from right under your feet out into the horizon. In this case, a pontoon bridge on the right, or just a channel and a tide pool on the left in Iceland. So in both cases, we're trying to give some 3D depth to the photo as opposed to just a 2D foreground. One thing that a lot of Aurora photographers find success with is keeping their hands off the camera. It's tempting to move around as the Aurora go overhead. But what you want to do is take a good framing of where you think the Aurora are going to be, and then take 100 exposures in sequence. That allows you to really capture the movement in a time sequence like this. And then you can also pick your favorite frames later on, because the Aurora are really about the motion as much as they are about the individual frame. But it can be hard sometimes when you see something, the grass is always greener right behind you, and so are the Aurora. You might want to look behind you and tilt your camera to something else, but you really have to commit to getting a few frames in there and getting this nice time lapse. So I always try and take at least 50 or 100 frames in sequence, and maybe have some other cameras that you can then set up facing the other direction. And here you can really see how those auroral curtains twist around each other and go right overhead with their immense scale. And even the motion within the curtains is in opposite directions of one another next to each other. So it's like a river of light, but there's turbulence and there's even flow in reverse directions. That really speaks to the magnetic characteristics of what we're seeing. A rental car is one of your best pieces of equipment up north, because it's your camera bag, your emergency shelter, it's your tour bus, it's your hotel room when you're snoozing at 3 a.m. It's your battery pack, it's your source of warmth, and your closet in your kitchen. So I've always made sure to get a good rental car, whether it's the Northwest Territories, Iceland, or the Yukon. And also make sure when you're at the rental shop, get one that you can leave running but turn off all the exterior lights, because then you can leave it idling to stay warm, and you're not creating light pollution for everybody else in that area, or for yourself when you've left your cameras out to keep taking pictures. It's an important thing to do when you're renting the car and you're actually at the rental agency. Make sure that you can turn off all the external daytime running lights and leave the car running. Here's a little trip diary of some of the places we went to between 2019 and 2023. And this really speaks to luck, I think, more than anything. I was chasing in 2019 one of those coronal holes that came around every 28 days. So I went to 3 locations at 28-day intervals. The first was Iceland. And even flying Icelandair over northern Labrador, one of the luck things here is to make sure to get a north-facing window, and have your camera ready. Don't pack it away above your head, because you are probably going to see something like this out your window. And I was fortunate to see it. In fact, the people in front of us told us to keep down our excitement, because they were trying to sleep and they'd closed their window because they wanted to be well rested for their aurora viewing in Iceland when they got there. And had they opened their window and woken up, they might have seen this. So this was taken with an APS-C camera, like just a little Canon camera, a few $100s. But a lot of people might just have their phone ready to go when they're on the plane. And this was taken between Calgary and Halifax last November out my WestJet window. And you can see the Big Dipper there. So we're obviously looking north, and we can see all the noise abatement that a small camera sensor tries to do. But anyways, it's a good memory. And I wish I'd kept my camera with me at that time. So again, you kind of make your own luck. And had I had one of my good cameras, or even a plunger mount for a window so it can take a sequence, that would have been lovely. One of my favorite places in Iceland, it tends to have a little bit clearer cloud cover, is Akranes, which is a smaller town north of Reykjavik. And there they have huge rocky tide pools and one of the oldest lighthouses in Iceland. And you can just rock hop between the tide pools. It's maybe 5 degrees during the fall or winter, and get these amazing auroral photos. And I just had a really good time doing that. Of course, your tripod might fall over into a tide pool and you won't find it again, but it made for a nice mix of foreground and background. The lighthouse itself is now used as a concert hall because of its amazing acoustics. And I took a portrait of the lighthouse keeper in front of the Aurora and his lighthouse because nobody had ever done that before for him. And that became a tradition of always taking pictures of people who didn't have really good photography equipment and emailing it to them later so they could share in the experience. Maybe it's a good luck charm. Further down, there's not too far from Reykjavik, there's a national park that really has those hexagonal basalt columns and these sort of dragon's teeth out in the water. And later on in the night, you get these ragged pulsing aurora that are very striking. And this is after all the tour buses have left and everybody's gone home. You stay out for those after midnight aurora, which have a completely different shape and behavior. As you can see here, they're not curtains anymore. They're like these little flags, and they tend to pulse in unison, almost like the skin of a octopus or squid or a cuttlefish. And that's sort of a chorus effect of resonance in the Earth's magnetosphere, of energy bouncing back and forth along the magnetic field lines. So this is a very good photography location too. And you can actually run up some of those mountains and look straight down. So right before sunset, when I got there, you could look right down to the ocean and get some pictures of these dragon's teeth. Of course, you can go along the south coast, which is very accessible along that main ring road all around Iceland, and go to the waterfalls there. And even though it was cloudy, we used a 40mm f2.8 lens and got a nice compressed shot of this giant waterfall sort of complex, I guess you could say, or staircase, just as the clouds were coming in. And again, the parking lot was empty. Everybody'd gone home, but you stay out till midnight and you wait for the good photo. Near Destruction Bay, this is flying into Whitehorse and then driving a few hours to Kluane National Park, which is a beautiful drive. This is one of my favorite beaches for sure, and one of my favorite experiences. There's this huge lake looking straight north, and you can see the aurora columns there. And even though there's clouds coming, that actually adds to aurora photography if there's a bit of a gap in the clouds, because now you see these different levels and perspective of the aurora, how they're blocked and how they're sort of a part of the night sky. And it's warm on that beach too, with lots of giant rocks to act as a foreground. Just a really nice experience, I think. So this was in the fall, and going to the Yukon in the fall, there's many reasons to do it, but we go up every September now because of the fall colors, because of the drives up to places like Dawson and Midnight Dome, and the drives out to Skagway, which is in Alaska. And these were, I think, KP4 or KP5 conditions that you'll see something like this. And here's that single frame from that sequence we saw earlier, where you get one of these giant magnetic churns. And I think I originally called this photo magnetic overhead or something. And that's when those curtains start to feed back on themselves and really twist. And further along the horizon, you can see how the green becomes oranger because of the scattering of the atmosphere, just like the sunset becomes oranger. And so this twist is probably several hundred, if not 1,000 kilometers across, and formed and dissipated within minutes. South of Whitehorse is Marsh Lake. It's a popular camping area close to Carcross, which is another great place to visit, a smaller town. And there's a quiet pontoon bridge to a small campsite. And that was actually a really beautiful pontoon bridge to take photos of, because you were surrounded by a very quiet pond. And as long as you didn't rock the boat too much and set up the tripod, you could get these very nice foreground elements of the bridge and the trees and some nice aurora overhead. And this is a cropped image. This is sort of the wide angle image. But if you crop in, never be afraid to crop your images and think you missed out on something, because you're just focusing the viewer. This is just a few of those trees kind of tilted over and reacting to almost what looks like they're reacting to the motion of the aurora. So as Tarek said, composition matters, and cropping is something that really works well with the aurora. And maybe you can spot a particular galaxy up there in the top left, if you're careful. Another thing that's been in the news is Steve, which is sort of this white formation with a green picket fence. And this was actually seeing it south from that same pond. So it's a different form that's not really the aurora, but it stimulates emissions of light, and it's still being studied. And it was discovered by photographers just pointing out what they were seeing. Yellowknife's a very popular destination. Even downtown near the Pizza Hut, you can see formations like this. So I enjoy visiting Yellowknife in the springtime when it's only -20 or so. And this is from that last trip, the big churn up along something called the Ingram Trail. If you rent a car, you can drive 30 minutes along many, many frozen lakes just to the east of Yellowknife. And each lake you can stop and have a campfire and take photos and sometimes even drive on the ice. So it's definitely worth renting a car if you feel safe about it, if you have some experience being out there and driving along the Ingram Trail. And there's that Steve again on the left from that same lake. This is a Madeline Lake. And this is the difference between taking a single picture and taking a time lapse and being able to assemble it into a movie. You can suddenly see it come to life. And of course, as we saw before, the best way to make good luck in the Aurora hunting is not to make Aurora hunting the only goal. Keep some time to be awake during sunset, to explore, like the ice highway here on the top right, or some of the cultural events where you are, even just the good food, or the snow sculptures, or whatever the case. Keep an open mind, and if you don't make Aurora the only reason for your travels up north, you're going to have a good time no matter what. In terms of not missing out, I've also set up some, or been working on a project I call Aurora, where I'm taking commercial cameras and writing Python software on Raspberry Pis to automate the cameras. And that way I can enjoy my artistic photography while I know that everything is being captured by an all-sky imager next to me on a tripod. And it's just controlled with a cell phone. So I might be 50 yards away or at the campfire and getting some all-sky imagery like this. And here's an example of that up at Midnight Dome in Dawson. That's about a 6-hour drive north of Whitehorse. And here's another example from that, seeing those red aurora down south. This is taken from right in Whitehorse. And here's an example of a time-lapse movie you can capture using a fisheye all-sky imager. So you're capturing the entire sky at once. And you can see those quiet aurora, and then suddenly one of those substorms we talked about filling the whole night sky all the way overhead to the zenith and then even further north. And so that's why it's worth waiting and keeping your eyes peeled, certainly. You can do 360 panoramics. Alan Dyer does amazing panoramics. You can see the different formations of aurora here from Prelude Lake. All the way in the south, those ragged flag-like aurora to the individual curtains on the right. These are long exposures, so you capture a lot of stars and other formations as well. So even dim aurora are a good photographic opportunity for long exposure to capture more of the night sky. In Photoshop, and what you'll see on social media is people become slider slammers. You get addicted to moving the clarity, the saturation, the sharpness, the contrast, all the way to the right to have impact. So I just wanted to show here the difference between a raw image right out of the camera on the left, what somebody might be tempted to do in post-processing, and then on the right, sort of what I do or try and keep it to. It's more like what the JPEG processing is out of a camera. And one of the tips I'd say is always photograph in RAW and JPEG, because the JPEG processing image that's effectively developing the raw images in the camera for you has been developed to be very subtle, but very impactful in how it transforms that imager data. And it's a good guide to how you might want to post-process your images too. Also print them up. Not enough people print up their images. I tried for a fundraiser once printing cards on polar pearl metallic paper, and it came out beautifully. So this is just on a standard Canon inkjet printer, $100 or something, but choosing a good metallic paper really gave it some punch. And so it was nice to be a part of that fundraiser and making these cards. Also do some art. You've seen a lot, maybe draw something up. iPads have the Procreate app for just a few dollars, and it's really empowering to play with. Feel free to do interesting stuff with all the amazing Photoshop technology we have. I'm currently using Affinity Photo instead of Photoshop because Affinity Photo is a one-time payment, but it has all the features of Photoshop for raw development. And here's just turning a panoramic into polar coordinates, which is that small world view. So feel free to play around in your post-processing and be creative. This is an overhead panoramic that's been wrapped into a donut. So you can see the north on the bottom left and the forest there. And then the panoramic follows the galaxy all the way overhead to the south. And then it's just sort of wrapped into a donut. And I really liked this sort of north-south panoramic because I'd never seen anything quite like this before. Finally, with those all-sky images, you can actually reproject them in YouTube VR, or in this case, I wrote some software in collaboration with the University of Calgary's Aurora X program to take their all-sky imagery and reproject it inside a virtual planetarium where you can look around online in real time and see what the aurora were like that night. So we're taking kind of scientific imagery of a fisheye lens and turning it into something much more human. And of course, the forest and the tent and all that is just 3D elements that are added to give it a sense of space. But this project we worked on allowed them to provide access to many nights of auroral activity through something called a Keogram library on the left, and then be able to dive in and see any one of those nights as if you were standing there. So I'd encourage you to visit that URL and maybe play around. It's like a free trip to Yellowknife when you're feeling a bit bored and it's raining outside. So here's the part where we talk about links. Space Weather Live is the place to go to for immediate aurora weather graphs. It's like the weather network, I guess you could say. They also have a wonderful blog that gives you some background information and learning about solar activity and auroral activity. On YouTube, Tamitha Scove is sort of the go-to person for giving these auroral forecasts and geomagnetic forecasts and solar forecasts. And she also does longer seminars that really educate about this topic. And so I'd encourage you to watch some of her videos as well as her weekly weather forecast for space. Because I'm a web developer and I do user interfaces and data visualization, I also wanted to take that same data, instead of it being graphs, actually being a simulation. So you can visit kpfox.com and it gives you a 5-minute KP index graph over the last 2 hours, and also allows you to see what it might look like at certain latitudes. And you can also click around and see what a lot of activity look like. So it's sort of developed for all audiences, but it's not just graphs. It's actually something that correlates to what you might see. In terms of books and gifts, I'd recommend these 4. I've read them all. My favorite one is on the far right. It's out of print, but it really is an Aurora Chaser's handbook, much like the RASC handbook. You can find it online used quite easily. The next one is sort of a coffee table book, the Secrets of the Aurora Borealis, and that's by one of the original researchers that came up with the concept of the substorm. And it also ties a bit into the culture of the aurora in the deep past and how other cultures see it as part of their mythos before there was the scientific explanations. Melanie Windridge's book, The Search of the Northern Lights, is very much a travel log with photographers, scientists, researchers, and it's kind of a nice tour de force to read through. Finally, the historical biography of one of the first people that were obsessed with the source of the Northern Lights, by Lucy Jago. That's a historical biography, and it really speaks to the obsession that some people got with the Northern Lights and understanding them. And so it's a pretty remarkable book, and it's also a bit tragic too. The first few pages, several characters lose limbs to frostbite. Finally, AmazingSky.net by Alan Dyer. He really talks about wonderful travel logs, techniques, and equipment reviews. And of course, the Alberta Aurora Chaser Facebook group is great to interface with, whether or not you're in Alberta. It's kind of become a Canada-wide go-to place online. If you want to see the aurora, there's the webcams. This particular URL has a series of the best webcams to go and view. The one up in Churchill, Manitoba is real time and is particularly good from the Northern Studies Center. And finally, you can check out my blog at capturenorth.com. It talks about the history of aurora, some imaging techniques. It has a catalog of wide-angle lenses for various mounts you can use, and also links to some other resources like the Aurorasaurus blogs. So be adventurous and be safe with your Aurora travels. Engage very much with the Aurora community and realize that it's art and science, and it sort of brings together a lot of different elements that we all enjoy about this community. So thank you very much for your time. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions, or if you want to go out for a photo shoot. Again, I'm new here and I've got a lot to learn about the local area and the dark skies. So thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. Your photos are phenomenal. You were lucky to be able to travel to places where you could actually see them. Personally, I've seen the Aurora twice, and they've never been in color. They've only been white undulations on the horizon. But at some point in my life, I hope to get up further north to see what you've been able to see. Any questions from folks for Jeremy? In the chat, somebody did make note of there was an Aurora way back when, I'm trying to think, 1989, that somebody made note of. That was seen.
Remember, we were at St. Croix, and there was about 18 of us there. We weren't expecting Aurora. I don't think any of us looked through the telescope that night, because it was almost 3 hours of continuous display. It was astounding. And I don't think anybody was expecting that. Maybe that's the one Dave is talking about. But I know there was about 18 of us at St. Croix, and we just come out of our cars and just never stopped looking up, because most of us never even set up our telescopes. It was just a phenomenal night.
Could I ask, St. Croix is sort of northern, on the North Shore somewhere? Does I understand it?
It's sort of St. Croix. I'm assuming, Paul, you're referring to our observatory.
Yes, the observatory at
just
St.
outside
Croix.
of Windsor, Jeremy.
Oh, okay. Yes. And that was 1989.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't 89. 89 was the one that knocked the power out of Quebec, that big one.
Oh, yes.
And 1989, St. Croix didn't exist, so that must have been in the early 2000s, probably, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
If we go to the Space Weather Live website, they have a deep archive of the biggest geomagnetic magnetic storms listed in order. I don't have the link right now, but because of their deep archive, it's very interesting to go back and look and correlate your personal experiences with what the magnetic conditions were at that time. So, so it must have been a pretty big event to see from there. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, Michael Bochat mentioned in the chat that it was, he said, imagine the KP index number for the 1895 Carrington event that was seen to Bermuda.
Yeah, it's like Spinal Tap. Does it go up to 11? I know KP goes up to 9, but maybe they'd have to introduce a new scale. The interesting thing about the KP index is, even though everybody uses it and talks about it, it's by no means the best or most reliable or most timely method. It's just the one that has the best historical record. And so they think we want to have continuity of that record. And it's just like the solar synopsis maps, which are still hand drawn and hand labeled. The continuity historically is at least as important as its accuracy today. So there's actually many different ways of monitoring current activity, but that one is, I think, a good entry point to start with, because it can go back 100 years.
Yeah, and Michael also noted that he picked up a book by Tom Kerss, Kerss, called Northern Lights, The Definitive Guide to Auroras by the Royal Observatory, Greenwich. So it might be something else to look for.
Yes, definitive is definitely a that's a commitment. Must be a thick book.
I don't know if I should mention this one. Pat, would you like to address the one regarding the Space Weather Live April Fool's Day tweet?
Oh, I just posted in the chat. I had never heard of that website before, and I was trying to figure out why they had a picture of Donald Trump on it. It's basically their April Fool's story about he had made a press conference about launching nuclear weapons at the sun to improve the aurora displays on Earth. And they had sent one of the reporters down to talk to a helioseismologist about it.
Yeah.
And like any crazy thing, it's sort of based on reality. In the 1950s, I believe, or in the early 1960s, there was the Starfish Prime nuclear tests in the upper atmosphere of Earth that did create Aurora, and they were so disturbed about how much radio interference this caused that they just didn't do them again because it was far more impactful than they realized. So just on Wikipedia, look up Starfish Prime, and they have some pretty shocking pictures of the air glow that occurred because of these tests, and about the so like any crazy April Fool's thing, there's an element of truth to it.
Tarek, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to ask you, when it comes to Aurora photography, I remember when we went, I think 2015 and 16, there were some moments where, or depending on the location and the strength of the aurora and the colors that were being emitted, all the whole picture would be just green. So even the foreground would be green, which kind of ruins the picture because, you know, it should be of a different color. So in these situations, like how would you handle that? These scenarios or these situations?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And a lot of deep sky imagery is spoiled by air glow, which is like the very gentle version of Aurora. They're saying that darn green that we have to filter out. And well, Aurora is just sort of crazy air glow, I guess, that's highly localized with a lot of structure. And what I've found is a lot of people have an idea. I want to capture a certain thing that they have in mind. It has to look like a dragon, and it has to be these colors and this shape. But what I'm realizing is that you just have to capture what's there. And what's there is not what you see. And what your camera sees is what the next camera might not see. It's one of the biggest factors comes down to different images you see is people choosing a different white point, color balance, white point. And usually you set your camera to manual white balance temperature of around 4,000 Kelvin, 5,000 being daylight, which you usually use, 4,000 being a bit cooler. And that 5,000 shifts everything to much more lime greens and redder reds, and 3,000 or 4,000 are much more mint greens and much cooler look to it. A lot of Aurora photographers maybe use or abuse the sliders in Photoshop called haze removal that are used for air pollution haze removal. So that's UV and blue light scattering. They work really well for cutting out anything that's kind of hazy because they are a local analysis by Photoshop. It's not like a global adjustment. Haze removal in Photoshop, if you revisit your raw images, will have a pretty immediate impact in clarifying what's bright and suppressing what's dim. And it's worth, you know, trying out and seeing how well it works for your particular image. But yeah, if you want, you can send me one of the raw images and we can go over it together at some point and see what techniques of post-processing make it have the sort of vision that you wanted it to have, and how we could get the most out of it. Because again, it's so highly dependent on that particular moment and that particular aurora formation, whether it's very crisp with very fine details because of a lot of energy, or whether it's highly diffuse because of a very long exposure. I remember standing next to a person in Yellowknife who refused to stop taking a 30-minute exposure of the aurora. He said, no, I'm going to capture it all in one frame. And this was during high activity and things moving around. I'm sure he just got a completely white frame and he missed everything. I felt terrible for him, but I could not convince him to take shorter exposures, I guess. But it all comes down to your personal choices with the imagery. So yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about it later on and see what we can do.
Sure. Thank you.
Good. Well, thanks so much, Jeremy, for that. You certainly built on what Tarek had introduced in his talk briefly about the aurora, and your photos from up north are absolutely phenomenal. So I thank you very much for this afternoon's talk, and I'm sure there'll be many members that will be in touch with you if there's any hope of Northern Lights coming down our way. They'll be, Jeremy, help! So thanks again.
Thank you for allowing me to participate. And again, I look forward to being a part of RASC Halifax.
Good, and you're a welcomed addition to our center. I thank you. Okay, next up we have our observing chair, David Hoskin, who's going to be addressing for us what's up in the April skies. And given today's April 1st, David, it's a perfect start to the month instead of partway through like it is normally. So now, I do believe you're co-host, so you should have no problem sharing.
Okay. Hold on. Okay, everyone see that?
Yep, got it.
Perfect. Okay, so let's hope April is a good month for clear skies. The sun this month, well, everyone knows days are getting longer. By the end of the month, we'll be looking at about 14 hours of sunlight. Sun's also getting higher in the sky. Sun well, this morning, April 1st, dawn started at 5:14, and if it wasn't cloudy, we would see that sunsets at 7:41 with dusk at 9:22 ending, and that increases substantially by the end of the month. Now, in terms of solar activity, sun's pretty quiet today. These sunspots, which were responsible for some of the activity we saw, are rotating out of view. There's a couple small ones. There are no coronal holes presently facing the Earth, but March did go out with Aurora. These are images taken yesterday on the 31st, showing some huge coronal mass ejections coming off the sun. And just point out, this is Jupiter coming into view. So these images were taken by the LASCO C3 and published by National Oceanic and Aeronautic Association. Good thing we weren't in line of that. So the moon, full moon is coming up April 6th. The birds laying eggs moon. Last quarter will be on the 13th, and a new moon on the 20th. So around the 20th is a good time to get out stargazing. On the 22nd, there'll be a nice photo opportunity. The moon will be situated between Venus and the Pleiades in the western sky. So that make a nice wide angle composition for anyone, and you don't even have to stay up late. So I made a mistake there. That should be PM. 9:30 p.m. That's when you will see that. And on the 23rd, we have the Lyrid meteor shower peaking. This is not a heavy meteor shower. I think of upwards of 20 meteors per hour, but it does sometimes produce some nice fireballs. So, and the moon will be just past the new moon, so it'll be a crescent and setting quite early. So the skies will be nice and dark to see any of those meteors. And then the first quarter of the Frog's croaking moon will be on April 27th. As always, the best time to check off lunar features if you're doing Explore the Universe is around the time of first quarter, so you don't have to stay up too late. So that would be first quarter of the Frog's croaking moon around the 27th of April. And Mercury, in terms of planets, Mercury is the planet to look for this month. It's has its best evening apparition in April, and it's quite bright. So if it wasn't cloudy today and you went out at sunset, you would see Mercury shining at magnitude -1. And on the 11th, it reaches its maximum eastern elongation of 19 degrees. So if you're haven't seen Mercury, April 11th, assuming the skies are clear, is a good time to look. It would also be a good time if you want to take a picture of Mercury with a telescope. It'll be showing a gibbous phase. Venus, as I think everyone knows, if you've looked out, it's a evening sky object, very bright at magnitude -4. There's a waxing crescent moon nearby Venus on the 23rd of April. And that shouldn't be there either, I don't think. Mars is in Gemini, still fairly bright, and on the 25th it'll be near a waxing crescent moon. Jupiter is gone from our skies. It's too close to the sun to be visible. The solar conjunction is on April 11th. Saturn, on the other hand, is coming into view in the pre-dawn sky. So look for Saturn if you're up early by mid-April. And on the 16th, it will be close to a waning crescent moon. So that would be a nice picture to take. Uranus is visible between Venus and Mercury at the start of April. Technically unaided eye visible, but easily seen with binoculars at magnitude 5.8. By the end of the month, it's going to be pretty much gone into the evening twilight. So if you want to catch Uranus, see it in the first couple weeks of April. And Neptune will be low in the east in the morning twilight by mid-April. So this is April 11th, I mentioned. So you see Venus and Mercury quite bright in the sky. This is when Mercury is at its greatest eastern elongation, and there's Uranus right in the middle. So this would be a nice wide angle photo op again, because you'd catch Perseus and Taurus and Orion all in the same shot, along with Venus and Mercury. So look at that for around, if you went out for this photo op, again, don't have to stay up late, 8:45, so just after sunset. Spring constellations for your Explore the Universe program are Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, Botes, Leo, Virgo, and Libra. So these are all the spring constellations that you see in the south. Spring stars. Arcturus is the brightest of the spring stars. And it really does stand out in the evening sky. Dubhe and Merik in Ursa Major, the pointer stars pointing to Polaris, the North Star, and Kochab, one of the brighter stars in Ursa Minor. Denebula and Regulus in Leo, and Spica in Virgo. Lower on the horizon, we have the two stars of Libra. So you need a pretty good southeast horizon if you want to see Libra earlier in the evening. Deep sky objects, Messier 5, Melot 111, and Messier 44 are the showpiece spring deep sky objects. For your challenge is to get your binoculars out, and if you're in a nice dark site, have a look for Milot or Colander 256 or Milot 111. If you just look south of the plus 4.4 magnitude star Gamma Coma Berenices, that's where you'll find Milot 111, and it's a nice loose open cluster. It looks quite nice against the surrounding star field. Double stars are part of the Explore the Universe program, and this is an easy one, Mizar and Alcor. Mizar is a second magnitude star in the middle of the Big Dipper's handle. It's a visual double star, and there's as of yet no firm evidence that it's in any way gravitationally bound with its partner Alcor, which is fourth magnitude. If you have good eyes, you should be able to separate Mizar and Alcor. Very easy to separate with binoculars or split these double stars. If you have a telescope and train it on Mizar and Alcor, you'll notice that Mizar has a close-in companion. Alcor has an unresolved companion, so you can't see the companion of Alcor with a typical amateur telescope, but it's there. And in fact, Mizar A and B are also unresolved double stars. So Mizar and Alcor are in fact a 6-star system. And point of interest, between Mizar and Alcor, there's a star Sidus Ludovicineatia, which is a background star that you'll see in your field of view. Variable stars, also part of Explore the Universe, and Algol, the demon star, is one of the easiest examples to view. Before 1118 on April 17th, Algol will be at its maximum brightness at magnitude 2.2, and then after 1118 it'll start to fade, reaching its minimum brightness of full order of magnitude less at 3.2, 3.5 hours later at 2:48. So there's 3.5 hours between the maximum and the dimming, and then 3.5 hours later it'll Algol will be bright again, but you won't be able to notice that increase because it'll be after dawn. Nevertheless, you could certainly see Algol at its brightest and dimmest without staying up the whole night on the 17th of April. And it's a picture of the constellation Perseus, and there's Algol. So pretty easy to find. It changes its brightness because of its companion. Algol is an eclipsing binary star, and as the companion passes in front of Algol, it blocks out some of its light. And that's it for what's up in the sky for April. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one because I'm not an astro imager. But you mentioned in the Jupiter is in conjunction with the sun, so that's why you can't see it. But if you were to use a solar filter on a camera, do you think you'd be able to capture it? Or is that just so close that it just be obliterated regardless?
And it's going to be on the other side, like I say, really close to the sun. And if you had a solar filter, you're not going to be able to see Jupiter because you're blocking out so much light from the sun itself.
Okay.
And I don't. Yeah, even a hydrogen alpha telescope wouldn't. You just look at one wavelength, but you wouldn't see anything.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for David regarding what's up in April?
Oh, actually, I just see a note from Rob and Lisa. And I want to mention that the International Astronomy Day, April 29th, Halifax RASC will have a booth or an exhibit at the Discovery Center. Peter Hurley and I have been working on that, and anyone that wants to volunteer that day, contact Peter or myself. We'll find something for you to do. We're hoping to have, if the skies are good, to have an evening viewing session as well down on the waterfront behind the Discovery Center.
Great, thank you. Okay. Well, thanks again, David, for this. And just so people know, your presentation is posted on our website. So if you want to see aspects of David's presentation, you want to be reminded of something, please go to halifax.rasc.ca and it's on the homepage. Can't miss it. So thanks so much, David, for the what's up. Next up is our Vice President, Pat Kelly, and I'm going to have to give you permissions because right now I don't think you do to do your presentation, Pat. Got to find you first.
Yeah, you have to make me a co-host. I can't share.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was just looking for you in the list. Here you go.
There we go. Okay, this is going to be a relatively, make that Zoom thing go. Anyways, as I was going to say, this is going to be a shorter than usual version because there's less things to talk about than there was last time around. First thing up is governance. This time it's not our local governance, it's the national governance. There's national elections coming up at the annual general meeting for 4 directors' positions. And the nomination deadline has been extended to April 21st of this year. Judy sent me a very long URL to the governance document that sort of explains the process. And I've shortened it a little bit to tinyurl.com/RASC-election-2023. It's not as short and catchy as 800-565-7421 in terms of actually remembering things, but definitely a little bit easier to remember than the 100 plus character long URL that Judy sent me. That's basically to the policy documents, and the one you want to look for is policy G9, which explains how you can nominate somebody to become a member of the National Board of Directors. The requirements are relatively straightforward. You have to be a member of the RASC, you have to be older than 18, you have to be mentally competent. I was surprised that was in there, but that specifically said in the policy. You cannot be bankrupt. That one also surprised me that they were that specific, but they were. And you also have to be an individual. So presumably 3 people can't together go in and form a company or something to become a director. And essentially what you need is written support from 5 members in standing, paid members of the RASC, to support your nomination. And you can send that once you read the policy and find out exactly what you need to send in, or if you have somebody that you actually want to nominate, please get their approval before you nominate them. It's relatively straightforward. You go to rasc.ca, and when you log in, you look under the member area, and on the pull-down menu, there's a thing that says Board of Directors, and this drove me nuts because when I went to try it, it didn't match the image that Judy had showed me. It turns out that you have to contact the president. The president, I'm assuming, and Judy can correct me if I'm wrong, is on the nominations committee. What you need to do is once you go to the page that shows you the list of the active Board of Directors, is you need to click on this link down here. There's another page on the website. So that will take you to this one, which is natural listing. And there is a link to contact the president. So if you think of somebody that you think might be somebody willing to serve on the national board, the more people go in, the merrier. In terms of center stars this time around, first up on the list is David Chapman. He's on the list because he had an image published in Earth Sky News. and it's an image of Ceres, the dwarf planet. He used the robotic telescope at St. Mary's to have the telescope take this picture. And if you're wondering which one of those little faint things is Ceres, it's actually not any of the little faint things. It's the really bright star-like object right in the center of the image. And one of the things that makes this picture interesting is off to the right on your screen, you'll see the galaxy M91. So it's nice to get both a dwarf planet and a galaxy in the same image. And the image is a very small part of the sky. It's only 24 arc seconds on either side. And that's a 3-minute exposure. Or for those who count Mississippis, it's 180 seconds long. So you can do 180 Mississippis, or as I found out from somebody, if you're in Canada, you don't use Mississippi, you use Mississauga instead to count seconds. The second center star for this month is David Hoskins, who also had one of his images used in an article on Earth Sky News. So they had a feature on meeting cancer the crab and its beehive cluster. And this is just a screen capture from the actual caption lead up to the article. And what they used in his case was an image of the beehive cluster to illustrate their article. So congratulations to David as well for having a nice picture presented. Last but not least, we have upcoming events. The April 1st one is now almost over, so I put the strike through for it. We've changed the May one. The RASC General Assembly is May 5th to 7th. There should be a lot more information about that coming up in the near future. I believe Judy is going to be having a National Council meeting possibly tomorrow, and was in the very near future. So there should be some more information coming out about the actual General Assembly. And because it's being held on the weekend of the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th, we bumped our meeting back a week into May. So it's May 13th. The June 3rd meeting is at its usual time. June 25th is going to be the National Annual General Meeting. This year, they've separated the GA from the Annual General Meeting. And for those of you who really want to plan ahead, the first meeting in September is on the 9th, which is not the Labor Day weekend. It's the Saturday after the Labor Day weekend. We have the Dark Sky Weekend coming up in middle of August, August 11th to 13th. So if you wanted to camp in the park, you should probably get your bookings for that as soon as possible, given that national parks tend to fill up rather quickly. We have our Nova East is being held essentially the following weekend. That's held as usual at Smiley's Provincial Park, just outside of Windsor. And the new moon is a few days before that. So for observing and for doing things for the public sessions, we're going to have a nice crescent moon in the evening sky, assuming it's clear and we're not canceled due to hurricanes, which has happened in the past. And last but not least, we have the barbecue at St. Croix. We've set a date for that. It's going to be Friday, September the 15th. And again, the St. Croix Observatory is located, oddly enough, in St. Croix, which is the first exit. If you've driven to the valley, you go past Mount Uniacke, and then there's that long stretch of nothing. It's the exit after the long stretch of nothing. And we have nice dark skies out there. So it's going to be Friday, September the 15th, and the rain date, in case the weather is not cooperative, is going to be the following Saturday on September the 16th.
That's exit 4, Pat.
And that is it for this month.
Great. Thank you for that, Pat. I think I'll just make one note with respect to the Dark Sky Weekend. I'm not sure if Peter still requires volunteers to assist with the programming that will be happening down at the DSW. If you're interested, please contact him. And with respect to Nova East, Chris Young, who is the chair, if you're wanting to volunteer at the event to assist in setup or whatever, please contact Chris regarding that. And Tim, I notice your hand is up. Do you have a question?
That's my wife wishes she had a switch like that. Anyways, I just wanted to say thank you. Patrick reached out earlier this week and invited me via Facebook to your meeting. And I just wanted to say you had an amazing meeting. The presenters today were very fascinating and amazing images, amazing information, and just greetings from Saskatoon. And it's nice to be able to see what's happening in the other side of the country when it comes to astronomy. So I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit in.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words at any time, Tim. Yeah. Okay, well, that brings us to the close of our meeting then.
Judy, can I give a quick note for anyone who wants to
Please.
submit content for Nova? April 15th is our deadline.
Okay, so those that want to submit pictures, articles, book reviews, whatever, get them to Lisa Ann at Nova Notes Editor at halifax.rasc.ca by April 15, you said, Lisa Ann?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And a special thanks to our two guest speakers, Tarek El Wazzi and to Jeremy Kuzub. I'm going to get that wrong regardless, right?
I'll take either one.
And to our usuals, David Hoskin, Pat Kelly, and Paul Heath. So thank you, everyone. The video for this, if you want to review it again or view it again, will be up on our website, our YouTube website in the next few days. So keep an eye open there and you can see it again there. So thanks again. And we will see you on May 13, not the 5th. Okay? Because the GA is the weekend of May 5 to 7. So take care all and stay safe, stay healthy, and starting at your feet, look up. The skies are open. Fingers crossed. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.